Hi, my name is Sam and welcome to my YouTube channel. Since Halloween is fast approaching, I thought I'd make a Halloween special for you. Now, I don't really have any specific Halloween related stories, so I thought I'd tell you about the closest thing to Halloween that I have, which is my love for vampires. I don't really know how much Halloween is celebrated in your country, but over here in England it's huge. Everyone loves it, especially the gays. They call it Gay Christmas. And I'm a drag queen, and drag queens like it even more. They go bananas when it comes to Halloween. Now, unfortunately, I don't feel the same towards Halloween. I am fairly indifferent. I don't dislike it, but I don't care for it. It doesn't do anything to me. I love what it does to society and how it brings us all together. I love the excitement that it creates in people, but I don't have a personal connection to it. In fact, as a drag queen, people expect me to go crazy with my costumes on Halloween, and I usually perform on Halloween, but I don't go crazy with my costumes because I'm a singing and dancing queen, so I need to wear very comfortable outfits so I can dance. I don't want to wear long wigs, so usually I would post pictures as well. I usually wear a short curly yellow wig, and I have one long brown wig which looks very natural, but because it's very long, it's very heavy, it's very hot, and I can't really dance in it, so I never use it. And I used to wear it only on Halloween, but last year I decided not to do that anymore because I can't dance. So this year I'll be wearing another outfit. So I bought this outfit that I will show you here a while ago as a jumpsuit, just because I thought it looked cool and different, and then when I put it on I realised that it made me look like Mystique from the X-Men. And so this year I will use it as my Halloween costume, and I will keep my blonde wig on because I need to be able to dance. I won't do anything crazy with my face. I don't have blue foundation and I am not going to buy it, so I will play with eyeshadow a little bit and then we'll see how it goes. So yes, I am not fully invested in Halloween, but I love vampires. So, how did my love for vampires start? I grew up in Italy, and I was born in 1991, and I think in 1997 or 8, Buffy the Vampire Slayer landed in Italy. For those of you who don't know what it is, Buffy is a cult series from the 90s with Sarah Michelle Gellar as the main actress and Joss Whedon as the director. It's the story of a vampire slayer. Buffy is a vampire slayer, and her job in life is to kill vampires and demons. At the time it was brilliant, and actually I've been rewatching it in German on Disney Plus so I can brush up on my German. When I tidy up my room or do a bit of cleaning, I watch it in the background because I know exactly what's happening, so I don't need to physically watch it with my eyes, but I can just practice my German. And nowadays this series would not fly. I mean, if it came up today, it wouldn't fly. It's very much from the 90s, but at the time it was groundbreaking, especially for the special effects, I would say. You could tell there were special effects, most of them, but they were quite impressive for its time. So, I think I was about 7 or 8 when I discovered Buffy, and it only happened because when I was a child I really struggled to sleep and I never wanted to sleep, so usually my mum would send me to bed at 8 p.m, and then at 10, 11 I would always go back downstairs and try to come up with some kind of lie or drama to get her to allow me to stay up. And one night Buffy was on. I think obviously because it's not suited for children, it was on later on at night, and while I was downstairs I saw it, and I think it was from season 2, and it was a scene between Buffy and Angel, who is a vampire who she should kill but she falls in love with, and that was it. I got hooked. Now, I don't really know or remember how I then kept watching it, because time-wise it wasn't feasible for me, so I think soon after, what I think happened is that, soon after they started broadcasting it at 4 p.m. every day, Monday to Friday. So that's how I managed to follow it, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Now, as a general thing, I like magic, I like superpowers, and Buffy has a little bit of everything. It mainly focuses on vampires and demons, but there is also full-on magic involved. And I'm a dancer, so I like fight scenes for the acrobatics of it. So I just loved it. I was obsessed, possibly unhealthily so. I was absolutely obsessed with it, to the point where I remember I used to tell all my classmates to watch it. Every day I was trying to promote Buffy, and I told all my friends, oh, you should watch it at 4 p.m. today when you get home. Now, I was again 7, 8, 9 maximum, I think, when they were broadcasting it. They were broadcasting it daily. So I loved it, but I was also petrified. I was absolutely terrified, and I still am. So I loved watching vampires doing vampire-y things, but then it did leave me with a lot of fear in real life that vampires would jump out at me at any point, anywhere. And I'm not joking. It got to the point where, even today, at the time, I remember that I know, and I've been told that this is a natural reaction to the way you sleep. So I would always sleep with my head towards the door and the wardrobe, because I was terrified that a vampire would come out of the wardrobe, or come through the door. But I've been told that's a natural. Most people do that, not because they're scared of vampires, but just because they are alert. But I did it specifically because I was scared of vampires, and it's only then that I actively realised that I was doing it. And even to this day, I am 32 now, when a guy kisses me on the neck, the first 2 seconds are extremely hard for me, because my first instinct is to think that he wants to bite me, not in a fun way. My first instinct is to think that he's going to kill me. So it's really hard for me not to push a guy away immediately. That's my first primal reaction. I like it, but I can't take it for too long, because it makes me uncomfortable, because it brings me back to vampires. And I'm generally very sensitive around the areas with a lot of blood vessels, like most of us, I assume, but in a way that makes me uneasy. For example, here in the crook of my arm. Now, when I get my blood tests done, I don't particularly mind seeing my blood leaving my body. That's not a problem for me. My problem is the area. So if they drew blood from here or here, I wouldn't care, I wouldn't mind. I'm not scared of needles, it's nothing like that. It's just the fact that they need to touch this area, and I am extremely sensitive to the point where it makes me sick. It doesn't make me faint, but it makes me physically sick. And I remember, so I have a rare disease, so my body doesn't produce enough of one type of antibodies. I am asymptomatic, so I'm lucky, but I need to be constantly monitored. So as a child, and even now, I constantly need to have blood tests done at least once a year. And I remember, especially as a child, for me it was traumatic, because again, it wasn't even a needle, it was, when they disinfected this area here, the fact that that a nurse puts their hands and fingers in this area makes me sick. I just want to flinch, punch him in the face and run away. I literally just go like that, flinch like that, and not funnily enough, but if my arm is bent, I don't mind. So if I touch it now, it's absolutely fine. It's when my arm is stretched out, I can barely stretch it out fully, and also I can't touch the crook of my arm because it makes me sick. And I remember when I was a child, my mum had to tell me like a month in advance when my next blood test was due, because I had to mentally prepare and I had to rehearse. I remember that I would stretch out my arm and take one of those click pencils and pretend that was the needle, and I would bring it close to my arm so I could simulate the feeling of having the needle close to my arm. Now obviously the needle is not pleasant, so I do feel the needle as well, but again, it's not the needle itself, it's just the fact that someone is touching that area. And to make things worse, there is an episode on Buffy where a human, so one of her boyfriends is a human, and he goes to these sort of vampire brothels where humans willingly go to these places to have their blood sucked out by vampires for whatever kind of fetish they have. And there is a scene with her boyfriend sitting, and these two vampires sucking blood directly from the crook of his arm. And that image will never leave my brain. It made me sick to my core, and even just saying these words to you makes me sick. But and the same thing happens with my legs. So underneath the knee you have the same soft area that you have here, and even that I can't be touched there, and yes, it's very uncomfortable for me. But anyway, so I'm still traumatised by vampires. But I remember that at the time I could tell that watching Buffy was actually quite detrimental to me because I was terrified, but I just couldn't stop. I just wanted more and more and more. So I kept watching it. I remember I got to the point where towards the latest seasons, then they moved it back to night time, and I would record all the episodes with a tape recorder, and then I would watch all the episodes the day after. So I was obsessed, and you'll think I'm mad, but I was so scared, so petrified, that I made my own wooden stakes. So I come from the countryside, and my grandparents live basically on a farm, so they have a lot of wood lying around, and I found some random piece of wood that resembled a stake, so I just took them and I made one stake myself, and I'm sure I have a picture of these stakes on my phone, and if I find it I will post it here. I'm very proud of that one that I made myself with a machine. I don't know what it's called. It's a machine that basically sandpapers wood. The most shocking thing of it all is that I decided to be that physical and to make this thing. So that, I'm proud of that. And yes, I got to the point where I was so scared that I would walk around the house. When I was alone, I would walk around the house holding a stake. Not that that would have saved me, because I would have just, if a vampire had actually appeared, I would have just run away screaming. But I had to survive somehow. So yes, but I love Buffy, and at the time, that's when DVDs were starting to come out, and I kept begging my parents to buy me the collections. So my dad bought me season 1, and I watched it on repeat, because there were only 9 episodes, I think, and that's actually how I started learning English for real. So I have a British accent now, which I learned through Harry Potter later on, because when I first started learning English actively, not just through school, it was through Buffy. So I started watching Buffy in Italian, obviously, and then so the DVD series, and then after 3 or 4 full rounds, I thought, well, I might as well use it to learn English, because my dad, obviously those DVDs were very expensive at the time, so we couldn't just buy one season after the other. So I started watching it in English, which taught me basically everything I know. And you won't believe this, but that's the kind of English that I started imitating. So I started mimicking Buffy's English, Sarah Michelle Gellar. So as how old was I? Maybe 12, 13. When I spoke English, I sort of sounded like an LA girl. Because that was English that I was exposed to. Then I don't know how the transition to British English happened, but I mean it was through Harry Potter, but I don't remember how I made that decision. But yes, my first exposure to English was actually very American, and I knew every word, I knew everything about that series. So yes, that was how I was first introduced to vampires. Now, before we move on to the second biggest vampire-y influence of my life. I need to say this, and this will probably make a few of you angry. I love vampires, but I don't love many versions of them. I do not like True Blood. I gave it a go. I didn't watch many episodes, that was a long time ago, but first of all, I didn't like what they looked like, so physically, just the fangs just popped down, and that was it. And there was too much sex for the sake of it. And I'm not a prude, we've talked about some serious stuff on this channel, but I'm an actor, and I think that I was already training as an actor when I gave True Blood a go, so quite a few years after it actually came out. And as an actor, I still need to understand how I feel about nudity, because it's true that it's just a body, and I think the fact that we feel shame or discomfort, emotional discomfort being naked, is a social construct that was instilled in us for some weird reason. I mean, I'm pretty sure that in the past, everyone was naked because they had no clothes on. Well, they didn't have any clothes to put on. And also, I don't think there was any shame, because nobody told them they should be ashamed. And I would love to know, as general knowledge, when this shame was introduced into the world. So, I understand that it's just a naked body. We've all seen naked bodies before, and obviously on film and TV, no actual sex happens. It's all staged. It's actually, it might look hot and potentially romantic to you as an audience, but to us as actors, it's actually very boring, because it's very technical, it's very mechanical. It's basically a dance that you're naked, and you need to make sure that you don't make anyone else around you feel uncomfortable. So, on the one hand, I understand it's just a naked body. On the other hand, I still wouldn't particularly like being naked in front of millions of people, especially if there is no point to it. I mean, again, as an audience, it's hard to watch those scenes like on Game of Thrones, but as an actor, if it doesn't bring anything to the story, there's no point. At least, well, now I'm not even an actor anymore, but it still makes me uncomfortable. I wouldn't like the idea of having to do it, but I understand that some other people don't feel like that. Some actors are perfectly comfortable, and that's great. But even as an audience, if there is just, so if a series is erotica, basically an erotica series, or a sort of soft porn series, and you sell it to me as that, and I watch it knowing that that's what I'm going to get, I can understand it. But if there is more of a story around it, I don't see the point in so much sex just for the sake of it. So anyway, it all just put me off, primarily because, again, I didn't really like the vampires. I did not like Twilight. So when Twilight came out as a film, I was still in secondary school. I had never heard of the books, and I remember that I wanted to go to the cinema only because it was about vampires. That's all I knew, and I love vampires. So I dragged a few friends to the cinema with me to watch the first installment, and it was horrendous. It was so boring, it was so pathetic, and no. And I promised myself I would never watch any of the other installments, but my best friend, who is a straight man, he wanted to see the second one because he loved the first one, so he dragged me to the cinema. And I just thought, I mean, really, what's the world come to? My straight male friend forced me, a gay, soon-to-be drag queen, to go and watch Twilight 2. I don't remember the name of the film. So yes, I don't like Interview with a Vampire. I remember my mum knows nothing about vampires or technology, so even buying a DVD for her is a big thing. And I remember that because she knew that I liked vampires, for Christmas one year she bought me the DVD of Interview with a Vampire, and I didn't like it. I'm very particular with what I like. It doesn't mean that what I like is good quality and everything else is bad quality. That's not what I'm trying to imply. It's just what I like. In fact, a lot of you will probably tell me that the next series that I like is bad quality. But, so the only other vampire-related series that I like is The Vampire Diaries. Now, I know what you're thinking, gosh, you're gay. And yes, well, I am. The Vampire Diaries came out in 2009. Yes, and I was studying for my graduation. Well, I started watching it the summer of 2010 while I was studying for my graduation, which in Italy is extremely intense, and that was the only little break that I would allow myself. So I would wake up very early in the morning, watch one episode of The Vampire Diaries, then study for 4 or 5 hours, and then I would have a 1 hour break for lunch, watching another episode, studying again, and then I studied again, and then I think I watched one more episode in the evening, and I loved it. Now, I'm pretty sure that if I watched it today, it would be a bit pathetic. It is a teen drama, so do bear in mind there is that element in it. But if you don't know the story, it's about this girl who looks exactly like a vampire from the past, and 2 brothers were in love with this original vampire from the past, and they are vampires too. So when they meet this girl nowadays, obviously they are a bit taken aback because she's a doppelganger for the original vampire, and they both love her, and she falls in love originally with one of the brothers, and then there is a bit more drama. So what I loved about it was the plot. Of course, it's very American, just like Buffy is, so the dialogue is very American to the point where it sort of rubs me the wrong way after a while. But as a creative, the plot twists and the plot in general, so the storyline is genius, especially in the first seasons. Obviously then, like every series, they went a bit overboard. I think there are 8 seasons of it, but the genius behind the storyline and how they created this world with vampires and werewolves, and how it all began and how they all fit together, it's brilliant. And I loved, and I still do, the drama between the 2 brothers, and also the fact, so the reason why this girl looks exactly like the original vampire and all that. As a creative, I love the storyline. There is magic involved, obviously. There is a good brother and a bad brother, obviously. The good brother is boring after a while, but hey. And I remember at the time I was still trying to be an actor, and as an actor it has always been my dream to be a vampire, and I wanted to be the bad brother. It was my absolute dream, and I loved the way vampires looked. They look still in the series because it's still out there, and I highly recommend you watch it. They look less vampire-y than Buffy. I mean, Buffy has a proper change of look. In the Vampire Diaries, it's a bit more subtle, but I see it. And I love the drama. I mean, the drama mainly stems from the love triangle, basically, between the girl, Elena, and the two brothers. And I will never forget this. So this is one of the last series, I think, that had 22 episodes per season, so old style. And I remember that every season finale had me in tears, every single one of them, and the most heart-wrenching one is season 3, the season finale. It's so beautifully done and thought out, again from a creative point of view. It's mind-blowing, and I remember that I was crying so much while I was watching it that it got to the point where I couldn't see anything anymore. I couldn't see the screen because I had a thick film of tears in my eyes. So I had to pause the episode because I couldn't tell what was going on, because I just couldn't see it. So I had to cry it out first and then go back to it. It is very emotional because the way they play this love triangle is very deep. So it's not just a silly teen drama in that respect, I would say. They have to drag it out a little bit, obviously, but there is quality to the emotional side of that series. So I highly recommend you watch it for the vampires or for the love triangle. So yes, that did not really traumatize me. I think I was already over that time of my life, or well, the damage that could have been done to me had already been done to me by Buffy, so the Vampire Diaries could not make it any worse. So yes, that's my Halloween related episode. Let me know in the comments if you've ever watched either of these, if you like True Blood and all the other things that I mentioned that I don't like, and if you like Halloween and how you celebrate it. And on that note, I will let you go. Bye bye.